They're
It's
down. There it is,
first
number
point.
one.
Right there, yeah.
Here, I'll read this out if you. So
Yeah, go for it.
crypto-related activities include, but are not limited to, acting as crypto asset custodians, maintaining stable coin reserves, issuing crypto and other digital assets, acting as market makers or exchange or redemption agents, participating in blockchain and distributed ledger-based settlement or payment systems, including performing node functions, as well as related activities such as finder activities and lending. This is crazy. This opens the banks up to so much activity that they like crypto asset custodians. This is directly competing with what largely Coinbase has done, which is custodied Bitcoin for the ETFs. They're 9 out of 11 custodians for the Bitcoin ETFs. So that's huge. I mean, the biggest banks, any bank can now do this without having to go through the process of getting approved for it. So they're just, if you're a bank, you can now custody Bitcoin on behalf of other people, including an ETF issuer.
This was one of I got a couple of different points here I want to start the show with today, but the first one that comes to mind is Saylor's been talking about this for the last 2 years very vocally. And he said the three things that have to happen before Bitcoin really explodes are the ETFs, are the changes to the accounting rules, which have both happened, and the third one being this rescinded and banks being able to custody Bitcoin for clients. So I think people should really understand here, because when people, I think, first hear that, they say, well, I thought in Bitcoin you didn't want banks to be involved. I thought that was the whole point of Bitcoin, was to get rid of banks. But I think people really need to understand that there's a big difference between a central bank who has the ability to create money versus the bank in your local town. Those are two much different things. The bank in your local town is there to help you if you need to, right? They're different things. And I think I foresee a world anyways where these smaller banks actually get a lot more power than we've seen in the last couple of decades, and giving them the ability to hold Bitcoin. Just imagine what that's going to unlock for some of these banks. The first movers in this industry are going to be at such an advantage here moving forward. I'm sure a lot of them feel like threatened by Bitcoin, but I don't think they really comprehend that Bitcoin's actually going to be their saving grace, and they're actually going to be it's going to be a very big boost to their reserves and their deposits.
I think it's pretty crazy to think that even with this happening, a company like GameStop is probably going to have more Bitcoin than all of these banks combined. And not combined, actually. I mean, all of these banks, it's probably going to be at the very top just because of how much Bitcoin they're able to get right now, and the fact that they're willing to take those risks. I think they'll probably have more Bitcoin than every single bank. And they're willing to take those risks. I think the old banks, the banks, they're more risk averse, and they're only willing to do what will guarantee them profit. So they'll guarantee profits by giving out mortgages. They'll get that guaranteed 5-6% or whatever it is, but they probably won't go all in on Bitcoin for a very long time because it seems to them that it's too risky.
I think it also limits their ability to generate money, right? Like Bitcoin, you can kind of loan it out and stuff, but you still need fiat to be able to do that. You can't create more Bitcoin. Like even these small banks, when they create credit, they're generating that money out of nothing. When you get a mortgage, that money just appears. That's money that didn't exist before. It's now in existence, and they're getting a percentage of this money that they just created. With Bitcoin, that's like the huge part of Bitcoin that I love, is that you cannot create more of it as much as you would want to, as much as these banks would want to. So they will benefit from it, but it's also kind of going to destroy some of their abilities to run these fiat games that they've been doing for years. So it's a Trojan horse. It's like, and it's also like, if they don't adopt it, they're going to lose out just hugely. And if they do adopt it, it's going to cannibalize part of their business as well, but they're still better off from adopting it. And that's kind of what game theory is, right? It's like no country out there wants to buy Bitcoin instead of building infrastructure or giving it back to their citizens or whatever. But they have to. They have no choice because it's giving them a competitive advantage, or at least keeping them even with the other nations around the world if they adopt Bitcoin as well.
I think that's going to be one of the bigger trends in the next couple of decades here as we move forward is the individuals, the companies, the countries, the banks. The game theory here is that the last people to adopt Bitcoin are going to be the ones that fail. And I think that the banks who adopt Bitcoin and understand this thing for what it is, even if it does hurt them in the short term, the more Bitcoin that they can accumulate at this point, the better off they're going to be in the future. The more of everything that they're going to have leverage. They're going to have customers wanting to come to their bank. They're going to have the demand for deposits. So I see that as kind of the trend here is, yes, some banks will fail. I believe the last to adopt Bitcoin, some individuals aren't going to make it the last to adopt Bitcoin, and countries as well. But if we think about this, like kind of longer term here, this is what I love about Bitcoin is thinking like really far out into the future. And I think that the crazy thing for me is like, there will be banks that just forever, resist Bitcoin. They'll never adopt, regardless of what they hear, the pressures being put on them by their members. They just won't do it. And I think that the banks in that situation, people like the people who are watching the show today in the chat and on the screen here are going to have more capital than those banks in the future. And what the shift there, that's going to be such a weird thing to go through, like where the average person has more Bitcoin, the reserve currency of the future, than banks do. That's such a crazy concept. And that whole dynamic, the shift there is going to create just such a much different world, I think.
Yeah. And if you think about it, there's probably people out there today who are just stacking on a daily basis who are going to have more Bitcoin than some of the biggest companies in the world. Like there are people who probably there are people on Twitter probably right now who will have more Bitcoin than the US government.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
That's absolutely, like, I don't even know how many Bitcoin Max Kaiser has. There are other people out there who probably have a lot, like you have no idea who they are, but they're going to have more Bitcoin than entire countries, the strongest countries in the world. It's not even like small countries, it's massive, massive, powerful countries.
And just think about how that plays out too, because we worry about the governments now, we worry about the different policies in place. But if you look at this thing far enough out into the future, Bitcoiners are going to be the ones who have the influence. Bitcoiners are going to be the ones who make decisions, because he who holds the money, the wealth, they have the influence of the world. And it kind of seems like a crazy concept at this point to think about, but that's inevitably what's going to happen here. As long as we can keep the Bitcoin in the hands of individuals for as long as possible, that is going to shift. So at this point, it doesn't matter what the price is. It doesn't matter who the president is. Over the long run, if this thing plays out like we expect it to, Bitcoiners are going to be the ones who have the influence in the world, which is pretty cool.
I just saw Matthew's comment there. I have more Bitcoin than Germany. That's awesome. It's true.
Well, we all have more Bitcoin than Germany and Canada too. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
The plebs, all of us are front running this. Is truly is a grassroots adoption, and we're just now seeing what would be considered. I mean, I think we've seen different amounts of them, but I think what we're seeing now is a gold rush or a Bitcoin rush, where everybody's trying to figure out how to get more of this. Is it buying into a company that mines Bitcoin? Is it buying the Bitcoin directly yourself? Like, everyone's trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to capitalize on Bitcoin as it's becoming more and more useful, and more people are understanding the use case of a store of value and of perfect collateral and money that no one can print. These are all incredible use cases that people just still don't get. So many people still don't get it. And yet still Bitcoin is diversified in its holdings. 70% or so is held by individuals. So unfortunately, people, well, fortunately and unfortunately, but like people like, Larry from BlackRock, he has figured out what Bitcoin is. So he's going hard on promoting it and getting people getting it. Same with Saylor. Now, same with Ryan Cohen from GameStop. More and more people with lots of capital are figuring this out. So, that's what my goal is with education is to bring this idea of what Bitcoin is to more smaller players, because we all benefit from it. If we're far away from the money, we benefit the most from adopting Bitcoin.